Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventure Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. So everyone, we're so excited. Travel writer Debbie Stone, who I was just going to say Fire Monkey is on the show, but she is the Fire Monkey. We call her that. She got that a moniker back when she was in Bhutan. Today we're not talking about Bhutan, though we always love to talk about that region. We're going to be talking about Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, Debbie has talked about Scottsdale a few times on the show, but she went back, and I did not know all of this history. I knew Scottsdale had art and nature and even agriculture, amazing food, wine. Our friend, LDV Winery, Peggy's on shows. But I did not know just how much was there until these two stories landed on our plate here at Big Blend. And one, she went on a joyride. She's going to tell us all about Scottsdale Museum of the West. And then she's also really going to start off telling us a little bit about the Best of the West tour. And apparently she met Captain Kirk. So we're a little jealous. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday. And this is the first show with Debbie of 2025, but not the first show by a long shot. So welcome back. Happy New Year, Debbie. How are you? Fire Monkey.
Oh, well, thank you. And Happy New Year to you and everybody who is listening. Happy and healthy 2025. And yes, I was in Scottsdale in late fall, and always a wonderful place to visit. I have one of my husband's sister who lives there, and so we always look for the opportunity to visit. We don't need a reason to visit, but whenever I do go, I like to try and see or do something that I haven't done already. And there's much that I haven't done. I've done some, but there's so much more. And I was excited to find this tour, which is Joyrides AZ, and a cool company owned by a couple named Kirk and Monica Nicodemus. And they moved there and decided to create this tour in 2013 because they love Scottsdale so much. And they created these very interesting boutique tours using this kind of very deluxe golf cart that they take you around. And one of the tours was the Best of the West, and what focused itself on Old Town, which really was the beginning of Scottsdale. And so it was excellent. Captain Kirk has a wonderful font of knowledge of the area and the history, which I really knew very little to nothing about.
That's the thing to me about these articles, and everyone, they're all up on blendradioandtv.com. The link is in the episode notes. The history, I didn't really think of Scottsdale as the Wild West. You know what I mean? I don't know why.
I know.
Because maybe Tombstone and all that kind of gets in under our skin. But, and you and I just met, we missed each other. Nancy and I were in the Salt River area looking for wild horses. We found their poo and foxes and a whole bunch of birds, but no horses, and roadrunners. It was so beautiful. It was in December and it was so warm, and I don't know, it was the most beautiful day we spent all in the Tonto National Forest. And we drove through the Scottsdale area, Phoenix area, and realized, wow, we kept going like, if we lived here, we would be in the forest every day. You know what I mean? Hiking along the river, Salt River. But then, when you came in with these stories on the history, I was like, oh my gosh, we were walking in this incredible history. And part of what happened for us on this trip this adventure we went on, we went to lakes. We really had an amazing time. Was at the end, we were at the river again, where we started, and there was a Native American gentleman singing the top of his lungs from a boat, a fishing boat. And there was like a ceremony going on. And it was like a small, I don't know what was happening. It was private, personal, but like it's in a national forest area. So it was not like, you're crashing a party. But it was so beautiful. And Nancy and I stood there. It was like moving to tears. And I heard it while I was photographing some scenery way back. And I'm like, Nancy, there's someone singing. This is not a radio. And we get there, and there's this man just singing on a boat, and people were on the banks, like a few, like maybe 10. And now it kind of made me think, I was so into the nature side and realized this has been habitat for so many humans ancestrally, like ancient times to now. And I just kind of felt like I had to go back again. I had to go back and redo it. And thinking now, like, the Native American history into the Western, what was the Wild West, which I don't know. Maybe I just always thought of Scottsdale as refined and, art and wine. The Wild West was, part of the attraction to Scottsdale, but also this ancient history of the indigenous people.
Absolutely. I think learning about the roots, I don't know if many people know and understand, the whole roots of Scottsdale. And it's fascinating to know that, it really was founded basically with agricultural purposes. And, Captain Kirk took us around. We also, he wanted us to show us the surrounding area, the beautiful mountains that are there, and how easily accessible it is for people who live in Scottsdale to get out to nature in just minutes and to be able to hike around. But he gave us some basic history, which I was unaware of, which was, the town was founded in 1896. And then in 1912, Arizona became the 48th state. I didn't realize that it took 49 years to get there. And then finally, in 1951, Scottsdale became a city. And the most interesting fact about that is back then it was a population of 2,000, and today it's 250,000 plus, which is pretty astronomical about the growth. But it's understandable because it became such a popular destination. The agricultural started it, as I said. There were 10 East Coast families who came out. There was a lot of wonderful the orange groves and olive trees that were planted. In fact, Orange Groves gave it the first name, which was Orange Dale, before it was turned into Scottsdale, and that belongs to Winfield Scott, who was a former U.S. Army chaplain and a Baptist minister who came there. He came there for health reasons in the late 1800s, and he was inspired by the whole area and decided to buy hundreds of acres to begin farming. And he was the one who started planting olive trees, which happen to be many that are still standing there today.
Wow. So the agricultural, I had no idea about that kind of history with it, right? And agriculture is still prevalent, right? I know that there's actual olive oil makers out there just around the corner. So it's kind of, there's Scottsdale and then things are connected to it. And so that's where it started. And then I think there's other areas that came after that, right? With the agriculture. Some of the
the health reasons, I think, made it into a wellness mecca for in the 20s and the 30s. They had all these different health camps and different resorts were built, and people could go and enjoy the outdoor activities, and they could convalesce and relax. But it was really the ranching that kind of gave Scottsdale its kind of identity in terms of the West's most western town, which was what it was given, the moniker that it was given. And then based on this, it became this whole kind of Wild West appeal that tourists really were fascinated and they were drawn to. And local businesses got in with it, and so they enhanced this whole movie set-like ambiance to that. So it's a credit to this campaign, though, that the tourism industry really took off, and it is now the city's major industry and larger employer. And if you want to know numbers, 10 million people plus visit the city each year, which is like incredible. But people come because of the 300 days of sunshine and the warm weather. And a lot of people come in the winter when they're dealing with, cold, dreary, snowy days, and Scottsdale is very appealing, So, that's what drew people. But then this whole kind of Wild West ambiance really kind of took off. So that's how that came to be.
And that helps with agriculture, is that sunshine and the water, Salt River, Colorado River, you've got, and the Gila River's not far either. So these confluences of rivers, and that's again going back to the Native American roots, that people settle where there's water. James Michener always
Of
said,
course.
like, if you're going to start a story, start it at the water because that's where people settled. That was the common denominator for anywhere around the world. I don't care where it is. People settled where there was water. It
Of
just
course.
makes sense. But,
Yeah.
the Wild West part of this, so you got the ranches, so you bring in the cowboys, the Old Town. So that so there's art there, there's museums, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. But I love the fact that you, number one, were on a joyride. So everyone, the links are in the episode notes for the articles, which include joyridesaz.com. So this is who you want to hang out with, Captain Kirk. Come on. And go on with his wife. And, so they do all kinds of tours. So you went more on the history and getting to know that side. But I hear that they do wine tasting tours too. Am I right about that?
They do a lot. They do actually a margarita and tacos tour, a wine tasting tour, brew and spirits, a sip and shop, Native American culture and art, public art, and so much more. And they can really kind of gear it towards the group that you are with or whoever that you're doing it with. But they have all sorts of really interesting tours if you have different niches that you're interested in exploring. But on this particular tour, they focused on some of the more historical sites, obviously, and some of them included, there was this little red schoolhouse that was really, it was quite the building at the time. It was the Scottsdale Grammar School, only had 2 classrooms, but eventually it became the Scottsdale Historical Museum after it went through many renditions and purposes. So actually in 1968, the city wanted to tear the building down, which is when the Scottsdale Historical Society formed to save the place. And now it's a wonderful little museum, which is like a peek into the past of Scottsdale. There's lots of photos. There's a classroom set up as it would have been. There's exhibits about Scottsdale. And it's just a really kind of a fun flash back to the past of Scottsdale. And the people there are incredibly knowledgeable that run the place. So you can ask any question and they probably will have the answer to it.
I like that. So a lot of museums downtown. You can go to a schoolhouse, the rodeo museum, the old Adobe Mission. Oh, you had a photograph of inside. Was it the old Adobe Mission, like the church? Like that was that, right? It's
right.
So beautiful. Oh, that was beautiful.
The old Adobe Mission it's one of the 3 remaining Adobe structures in Scottsdale. It was built by hand by the Mexicans who came up and settled in Scottsdale. They came up to work in the agricultural area, but they came up also because they wanted to put down roots and they wanted to build a life there. So it was built and was lovingly restored and is a beautiful Spanish colonial revival building and used very often. So it's a fun place to peek into. Another wonderful place, I think, is the Rodeo Museum because it's quite a testament to the whole rodeo culture, which is really important to Scottsdale. And so the owner, Dave Alford, he was a collector and he collected all of these artifacts and these pictures and so many things. Posters with original artwork and tells you all about the rodeo culture there and the actual rodeo and the festival that they have, which is very significant in Scottsdale every year. It's been going on for many, many, many years. And across the street from that is a very interesting place called the Cavalier Blacksmith Shop. We didn't get to go in there because it's erratic hours depending on what the owner wants to do, but it is one of the oldest buildings there. It was opened in 1909. A blacksmith named George Cavalier who worked on the Arizona Canal at the time, and then he decided afterwards that he wanted to homestead land in Scottsdale, and so he chose a site which was on Main Street. And so it's really kind of one of those significant buildings in Old Town.
Now, when you're in Old Town, which we didn't do, and we need to because we got to go say hi to our friend Peggy there with her LDV winery. Sounds like there's galleries and then the history and then wine tasting shops and food. Is that right about the downtown? Like there's like a canal or something. So like this is a scenic kind of area to be in.
Yes, and it's very walkable. You know, you can just Old Town itself is within, it's like 1 square mile, and it's chock full with galleries, with stores and shops and restaurants and watering holes and museums and old historic buildings. So really, you know, it serves so many different purposes for people. But people love to walk around it. There's a wonderful Saturday market that goes on, a farmer's market there. It's just kind of just a fun place to be. But to understand that there's so many, that the roots are there for the whole city,
Wow.
that kind of is where it got going.
So all of this history, all these museums, like the rodeo, I want to check out the blacksmith shop. I'm always into that, but that's really part of that history, you know, is to go check that. I do want to go to the Mission. I love that. Now, what about the Rusty Spur? I was kind of leading into that with wine. I want to know about the saloon that you went to.
It's really like one of those, you know, it actually is the town's oldest cowboy saloon, but it really has that Old West ambiance. It's in this old bank building, a former bank building. So they say that the vault now contains the beer and the liquor instead of the cash. And so they've got live music. You can dance and all sorts of things. But it's one of those things where it's very atmospheric, and you just, you know, need to stop in and have a drink or just even have a look-see.
Mm. I love that you do these tours because I often feel like, and I know we talk about this all the time, but I'm going to say it again, repeating myself over and over, but it's true. These kind of tours give you like the understanding of where you are at, that overview, and then you can deep dive into whatever you want to. Go down a rabbit hole, go into a museum, and I want to see more of those pictures over here. I want to talk to the docent more about this. Or, hey, wait, I want to spend more time at the Rusty Spur. Did you feel that, having been to Scottsdale before, that this kind of gave you a better knowledge of the area doing this kind of tour along with the museums? That's kind of like the perfect package.
I think it kind of made a nice complete overview of Scottsdale, and really gave me an appreciation for how everything began there. And I think any tour for me is really rewarding and worthwhile, because if I'm just walking around, and maybe I can read some things, or look at some plaques on buildings or whatever, but I don't really get the full story. And when you have somebody who's taking you, who does know that story, it really just, I don't know, it just makes it enriches the whole experience.
And they always have this passion for it too. You know, there's a passion. I mean, these tour guides are doing this all the time, but they're inquisitive of you, what you want to know too. It keeps them like excited. Like, what are they going to want to know about? Oh, yay, this is exciting. You know what I mean? So I always love their enthusiasm for a place, you know, and I think they're just, I want to raise a flag for tour guides everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's the passion of these guides that they've really spent time studying and learning about a specific place, area, art, whatever it is, history, and they want to be able to deliver this knowledge to you, but in a way that's interactive, where there's a give and take. You know, they want the questions, and then you can have discussions. The other thing I wanted to mention about Scottsdale, particularly Old Town, is that in the area around is the public art. They are unbelievable. There are over 150 plus public artworks in Scottsdale, and basically it is one of I think it is the city with the largest collection of outdoor art in the country. And so you'll find all these wonderful sculptures and different murals and different pieces around wherever you go, which makes it very colorful, very interesting, and hats off to all the artists that contribute to public art.
Exactly. I think it's really huge. And a lot of times they're paid, right? And a town comes together for this, which I think is so important, that you celebrate the arts and the artist. You know, artists get to be fed too. Thank you. Not just beer and a plate of food. Like musicians here, just, you can't live on that. So I think it's so great because it's an investment in the community. And when you go into a town, I don't care how big or small, and you see that kind of investment, so many towns that we go to are so tiny and they'll have one mural. And it could be, everyone's closed for, that time of day, when you're getting there or a Sunday or something. And this mural will tell you the history that you don't get to see if you can't get to the museum at that, specific time, or you're just really on a time, restraint kind of thing. These murals will tell you the history of the town, and it shows the pride of the community and what was important and how it was founded. It's a picture way of doing it, or a sculpture way, right? But I always find that when you see that, the town is trying to communicate with you as a guest. It's kind of like if you go to a friend's house and, you're arriving late. They left the key for you, but cookies and milk. I'm back at Christmas time. Cookies and milk for you when you got there. You know what I mean? Kind of a welcome guide
Yep.
to the town.
Right.
It's wonderful. And it also is good for those who live there. Are you ready to go to the Museum of the West?
Yes, and in fact, I wanted to say that when Captain Kirk picked us up and dropped us off, it was right by the Museum of the West, Scottsdale's Museum of the West, and I wanted to we'll talk about it, but it really is one of those things that it's great to bookend your tour either before or after. This museum is extremely well known and very well respected, and it just makes kind of completes the experience, I think. So it is definitely something that I would urge people before or after, if they take some tour, even if they're in Old Town period, not to miss this museum, which is called Western Spirit, by the way, Scottsdale's Museum of the West.
Western Spirit. I love the name.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, because there is a vibe, right, that goes with that. The Western Spirit is kind of like giving you a little bit of everything. It's like the blend. I'm just saying, the spirit, it kind of gives you like, okay, what's the land about? What are the people about? What's the history? And this, museum, from what I'm hearing from you and reading in your articles, is that we're going to be looking at not just the history, but also the art and the art history that comes into play in Scottsdale.
Absolutely. The museum presents, the various aspects, in terms of this greater Western region, whether it's pottery, whether it's sculpture, whether it's jewelry, whether it's artifacts and memorabilia and paintings. So they have it all, and the galleries are all set up in a wonderful, easy way to navigate. And the jewelry is amazing, as you can imagine, and so is the pottery, which I thought was fascinating. It's a Hopi pottery that's on display, and then they also focus on women of the Southwest, and they put women artists front and center, and then you'll want to see these incredible bronzes that are just really unbelievable in my opinion. And then there's just so much. I think one of the keynote galleries for people that's very, very popular is the Spirit of the West collection, which is incredible, because if you're an Old West fan or aficionado, you will find just these amazing Old West items. I mean, you've got everything, saddles and holsters and spurs and chaps and sheriff badges and all these wonderful things. And they set it up in such a way that you feel, there's facades of a saloon and a hotel and a sheriff's office, and there's even Western films that are running at the same time. It really puts you really in the mood.
I was interested when you were talking about the women of the Southwest, and this was a legacy of paintings. Lillian Wilhelm Smith, I think we've covered her on a show before, like years ago. And she's important. Zane Grey's books were illustrated by her. And, women,
that's amazing.
I just want to really focus on the women of the West. I don't know if that's a, rotating exhibit, if that's a new exhibit that comes in and out, or like a fixture there, but the art part of it, women, to be known in art of course, we know about Georgia O'Keeffe, especially you, Debbie. You were a docent at the gallery there in the museum in Santa Fe. But there were so many women who didn't get known. You know what I mean? And sometimes get forgotten. And I really want to go see this exhibit because, it's like you see an illustration in a book, something like Zane Grey is such a, I mean, everyone in South Africa and England read Zane Grey books that I knew of. That was the connection overseas to the Southwest was Zane Grey.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah,
massive and he still is.
yeah.
But for her to have the illustrations in there, how many people know of her unless you get
Right.
reminded by these experiences of a museum. So I love that they had that exhibit. That's huge.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
it opens your eyes. I mean, I didn't know about these women. I really didn't. I've known about O'Keeffe, of course, and a number of other women here, particularly New Mexico. But the fact that these women, really were, pioneers in this whole thing, and Lillian, she was the first person to paint the Rainbow Bridge, and the fact that you're right, she illustrated these books back then. It would have been probably unheard of to have a woman illustrate these books, and
Yeah.
so another one, Jessie Evans, and she, her paintings were collected by the Santa Fe Railway, and that company had the first corporate art collection in America, and her paintings were a part of it.
Wow. Wow. This is cool. So do they change their exhibits? Do you know if they do that a lot
They
there or?
do.
Mhm.
They do. They have some permanent ones, and then they have ones that they change. I'm not sure about this particular one. I'd have to check into that one. But yeah, they do change their exhibits. They have some that are just there, temporarily. Then they have some that are there all the time. But this is, it was beautiful. It was wonderful to walk through this art. It's one of those things that brings you really closer in touch with the whole region.
Well, what also, speaking of that, right? So you saw Meriwether Lewis's pipe tomahawk. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that ties into your travels. You've done so much, on that. It's, Thomas Moran was like a hero. Remington.
I know.
I mean, we drive through towns and cities and we'll look at something and go, oh my God, that's a Remington. Stop the car.
Yeah.
The Remington thing
I know.
is huge. He covered
the memorabilia.
Oh.
Yeah. It's, people are really into that memorabilia. It's really a fun place to look for those little artifacts because, those are things that you wouldn't think, oh my gosh, his pipe tomahawk? Are you kidding me? So, but also, all these wonderful, like you said, names, Thomas Moran and Remington and photographer Edward Curtis. And they had all these wonderful images that capture, the life of the American West. And so, like I said, it really puts you in the mood.
George Catlin, like he is, I don't know, a hero, to me of what he has done. And so were there portraits of him or did his art, like what was, because I know that was part of the Explorer Artist series that you saw. That was someone that was John, I think it was John Coleman, did things and then, included George Catlin in there. I wish I could have met George Catlin. I really wish. Caitlin. I have my own way of saying it, I suppose, but that had to have been impressive to see that and see other artists pay tribute, right, to the artists.
It was beautiful. That collection that John Coleman did of the based on those portraits and those paintings of Caitlin and Bodner, it's very impressive. The detail is just incredible. I mean, it's hard to understand how somebody can take a bronze as a material, as a medium, and create these just so realistic people, portraits, whatever, in bronze, and it was very, very impressive and very moving as well.
Well, the other thing, you talk about this is, when we look at the West, this went all the way to Alaska, the Western spirit, right? So it's not just Arizona. And hey, I'm not saying not just, I'm not being derogatory on that. takes in the entire West. So I know Alaska's involved, but before we get there, you saw one of the exhibits or galleries was the A.P. Hayes Spirit of the West collection. And
Right.
in part of that was Western gear made in prisons. I didn't know this
Hmm.
existed. Didn't know this happened. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. The prisons of the area, I guess, made Western outfits. You know what I mean? Whether it was the pants and the shirts and the different kinds of things they used, whether it was chaps and hats and anything like that. But yeah, it was. I mean, the fact that those that was one of the themes. It was. Western gear made in prisons, as well as all these other ones: Western movies, Wild West shows, outlaws, lawmen,
Saloons.
saloons. All those things. Yes, I love that. I love that.
Oh, man. So then going to the Alaska part, so they really went out there and so for you, you've just done all these adventures in Alaska, right? In 2024 and before that and lived there. Um, so what was that like for you revisiting Alaska's roots?
It was wonderful because I have a personal attachment to Alaska, having lived there and known people with sled dogs, known Iditarod mushers, and it was interesting because they really uh, delved into sled dogs serving many different purposes: transportation, communication in the far north. And these dogs, they delivered mail, they took people from place to place, they moved freight, they moved supplies. They were vital to the survival of those people, and they were regarded not as animals but almost human. And so it was fascinating to see these wonderful paintings and some sculptures, and to read about the history of sled dogs, and to learn about, we've all heard about the diphtheria outbreak in Nome, and how the sled dogs were really the heroes because they were able to transport the antitoxin to the town, which was isolated, and they traveled 700 miles in 6 days to get this to help people. Otherwise there had been many, many, many deaths. So it's very, very interesting, and dogs that were made famous in Jack London's writings, and dogs that were responsible and helpful to the climbers on the first summit of Denali back in 1913, the ones at Denali National Park that the Canine Park Patrol has, that carry park rangers and haul supplies. They really went into a deep dive as to what sled dogs, and over the years the vital importance of these animals.
I love that you saw that. And when you saw like they're going on all sides of the West in this museum, that's what it seems to me, that they're looking at the West from all these different ways.
Yes,
That's what we
different
aspire to do as the
perspectives.
blend,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
so when you were there and you see, oh, they're going to Alaska, but not only are they going to Alaska, they're going to bring the dogs in, which is something, obviously people know that about Alaska, but they could have focused on all kinds of other things. They're like really, I think it sounds like the curation of this museum is that you're going to see something completely unique at every gallery, every exhibit.
I think it's really a wonderful, very well-rounded museum
Yeah.
because of the different perspectives that it brings. People may only think of the West in one way, and this museum says, hey, there are many different ways to look at the West, and there's many different wonderful things that came out of this region.
I love it. I love it. And it wasn't that far from you in Santa Fe, from Santa Fe to Scottsdale,
No,
Hey,
no,
good
no.
road trip, everybody. Just saying, it's beautiful. And
Absolutely.
you can catch Route 66 if you want. You know, you can do that.
Yes,
Just an idea if
yes.
you want to catch your, get your kicks on Route 66, be part of the Western spirit of that. Arizona was the first state to bring back the actual history of Route 66 into prominence. And it started in Seligman, and that's up near Flagstaff area, Winslow area.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's a huge centennial celebration coming up for that. And it's really about this entrepreneurial spirit. And when I think of the West, I think of that, about how
Yes.
people took chances, took chances on mining, took chances on, even boarding riverboats in the Southwest. That happened.
Yeah.
There was just so many chances and risks. And, I'm going to set up a shop in a tent, a restaurant in a tent. I'm going to do a boarding house, you know, all these stories that come out of the West. And, all of this you can experience in Scottsdale. Thanks for your articles, Debbie, and for telling us about this, because I think if people spent a couple days, 2-3 days in Scottsdale, obviously you can play golf. There's casinos. There's, all of these amazing things. There's art, wine, all of that. But I think, Joyride Arizona, like what they're doing with Joyrides and, these museums can kind of give you, it's a good place to start. Like if you're coming from overseas, you land in Phoenix, this would be a good introduction to the West for those coming from overseas.
Absolutely.
I really
Absolutely.
think that. Yeah. Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think it's wonderful. People have been to Scottsdale many times, which many of your listeners maybe have been to Scottsdale or Phoenix area, and they come for wonderful reasons. The weather and playing golf or hiking or just enjoying the sunshine and whatever. But if they're looking for something that gives them maybe a deeper dive into the area to find out really how it all began, I think it's a wonderful experience, and both the museum and the tour help to do that.
It's a dangerous place to go from what I'm reading, because I would want to write all kinds of stories on everything I see. You know what I mean? It's like when you start hearing all these stories, like the dogs, I'm like, okay, now I want to do this. Now I'm going to, it makes you want to explore the West. So everyone, the museum is westernspirit.org. Debbie's articles are up on blendradioandtv.com, and those are linked in the episode notes. Thank you so much. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for Santa Fe. And, because that's where she's usually calling in from. It's always hard to get her tracked down because she's always somewhere, she's always traveling. But next month, February, Debbie, you're taking us to New York again. You love New York.
I feel like it's in my blood, to go there once a year to take in the Big Apple vibes and to get my kind of injection of that city and its just vitality and all that it has to offer. So I love going there, and I'm never tired of going there. And whenever I go there, there's something new that I can do. And so I'm going to be talking about some fun new things for visitors to do.
Art, history, and food, y'all. Stay tuned. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much, Fire Monkey, and Happy New Year to you. Take care.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventures Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.